Hey John, have you turn that radio down for a second? I've seen here about the Renters Reform Bill. Do you know anything about that?
Oh, the Renters Reform Bill?
Yeah.
Funny enough, just reading about it. It got released a couple of months ago by the government. It's a Renters Reform Bill. The idea of it is to level up the housing industry, provide better homes for tenants, provide more kind of direct access for landlords to get possession of their properties back again.
Oh, okay, so it sounds like a positive thing?
I mean, overall it's positive, yeah, there's a lot of work to be done. I think they released it in May, they were going to debate it in Parliament the next day, that didn't happen, so don't know when it's going to come out. My guess is probably October 2024.
Sure. There's a massive thing about the evictions, like you said, isn't it? I heard about that in the news.
Yeah, so I was just reading about that. They're going to abolish the Section 21, the so-called non-fault eviction. So basically just asking someone to leave your property, which means that periodic tenancies are going to become the new norm. So as soon as someone moves in on a periodic tenancy, and I think they need to give 2 months notice to leave, but you can't ask them to leave unless you've got a bit more of a legitimate reason, such as you want to move back into it, or family, or you need to sell the property, or there'll be more access for you as a landlord to evict somebody if they're in rent arrears, but not just significant rent arrears, if they're a persistent late payer. I mean, that would be potential grounds for eviction.
So what you're saying is then there's no fixed term for a tenant. So if I had a tenant move into my place, I couldn't fix them in for 12 months?
No, at the minute it's 6 months is the minimum AST, assured short-hold tenancy you can permit someone to have at the moment. Most people go for 12 months. But yeah, after this comes into play, the potential is that there'll be no fixed term tenancies.
Okay, a big change in there.
Big changes on that side of things, absolutely. I mean, other bits that kind of came up in here was about pets and children and people on receiving universal credit. You're not allowed to say no to them, and realistically the bill is designed to kind of encourage landlords to get involved on that side of things and provide more accommodation to more people, to make it a bit of a level playing field for anyone looking for a home.
So I guess they're going to start introducing sort of fines and things like that for those that aren't?
Yeah, there's fines. I don't think there's any idea of what the penalties may or may not be for hanging around this, but one of the things that is going to be coming in as part of the Renters Reform Bill is a property ombudsman for landlords and a landlord register. So it's very likely that if you're a landlord, you'll have to be on a register, just like a letting agent has to be on some kind of register or regulatory body. Individual landlords will have to be the same as well. It's unclear at the minute if your property is managed by a letting agent, whether or not you can rely on their regulatory body to kind of oversee your requirements.
Sure.
But all these details will come out in the near future.
I guess you can put your money on the fact that they'll probably charge for you to be on that register.
Probably there'll be a fee, some kind of fee structure around doing that. Other things that I was just reading about within the Renters Reform Bill is minimum housing standards. So there's a decent home standards that they want to implement. So it's just raising the quality of accommodation out there. There's lots of stuff in the news about some accommodation just being below standard, condensation, mould, poor quality fixtures and fittings, damaged items, dangerous conditions. So the whole idea of this section of it is to increase the standard of the private rented sector.
Okay. And your feelings towards the Renters Reform Bill, do you think it's more tailored towards helping the tenant or helping the landlord? I
think it's potentially a little bit more in favour of the tenant, but fair enough, tenants have a voice to be heard as well, but there are conversations about levelling the playing field on both sides to make it fair on both sides of the playing field. For example, there was something about rent controls going in, so rent caps, not being able to increase the rent by a certain percentage. What if inflation takes off? That's going to really put landlords off being in the rented sector. They may sell up and get out of the property industry, which just restricts supply and increases demand. So I think there might be a bit of a U-turn being spoken about on that. It's not confirmed just yet, but things like that may be reduced within the reform bill, just to kind of maintain a bit of access for both sides.
Something to be said then about sort of rents at the moment and getting them up to market rate at the moment, so if landlords aren't operating at a market rate, if they introduce that cap, it's going to be difficult for them to get back up to
get anywhere near to it, and then the only way they've taken away the Section 21, so there is really restricted access to get your property back, so you can re-let it onto the market rate. So it just kind of shows a lot of puts a lot of relevance on keeping your property at market rate. It's unfair on a tenant if they're not paying market rate, because when their tenancy ends or they move house, they're then restricted. You know, they're going from 10, 15, 20% increase where their landlord hasn't kept them up to market value. Then they're a little bit short, and perhaps they've not kept their income up as a result because of not being motivated to keep up with the times or inflation and such and so on, so forth. But yes, it's a bit unfair on the tenants to leave them so below the market value. Although it's great to have a bargain.
But it creates unrealistic expectations, I suppose, doesn't it? You know, so a lot of this is sort of levelling off those expectations and getting people prepared for.
Getting people prepared for it, absolutely. Property Mark, Arla and the NAEA, they've carried out a survey. They've had hundreds of responses so far, and responses from landlords who want to have their say on what's going on. And so there's a bit of feedback coming on. Property Mark are lobbying for a bit of an input to how the legislation is going to be formed and formatted, and hopefully have some kind of weight weighed onto which way certain parts of the reform bill is finalised, I suppose.
So there is a fight being fought on the landlord side of things as well.
Yeah, definitely. And there's got to go through parliamentary debates and everything else yet before it even becomes law. So the crucial thing is, it's not law now. It's being spoken about. It's not effective. Probably won't be until at least autumn 2020, in my opinion.
If you had a landlord sat next to you now, worried about the renters reform bill, what sort of the first steps would you tell them to be doing ahead of it?
Well, I guess if you're a landlord in for the long term, property's not a quick buck game. You're in for the long term type of thing. I probably wouldn't have too much to be worried about, because there's controls in there to protect the landlord if the tenant fails to pay their rent, or if they persistently are late paying their rent. Then there's protection in there for the landlord, and in terms of the tenant, they've got protection for if they expand into having a family, want to have a pet. They've got open measures in there to kind of engage in that conversation with the landlord to further their tenancy.
Nice. So positive overall?
I think it's a positive overall. There's going to be change, and it's always difficult getting used to the change. But I think once everyone's used to it, things should kind of be moving on to the positives, really.
Any final things
I was just looking through my notes, what I printed off earlier on.
Was there anything final then from your research?
Well, that's pretty much it so far. But what I would say is, if I find out anything else, I'll let you know.
Nice one. Right, well, turn it up. This one's a banger.
Oh yeah, actually. Party!